Fantastic. Well, hello and welcome back to Curious Faith, questions and conversations for those people thinking about following Jesus again. I'm your host, Bill Wallace, and we're super glad to have you continue to join in with us. Hello to everyone who's either watching us on YouTube or listening to us in a podcast format. We're having just some really fun conversations, some different topics than we've explored in other ways, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation that we are going to have today. If you are watching us, then you see that we are still in the land of quarantine and COVID, and continue just to have people at different levels of vaccine and comfort levels and all that. So again, we just like to encourage and say what a great way to love your neighbor than by wearing a mask if that's what needs to be done. If people are fully vaccinated and don't need to wear masks, we cheer that on. That's so great. Love your neighbor, get vaccinated, right? Good stuff. So we are wearing masks here for this conversation. Look forward to that. So I'm going to welcome in my guests. Hello, guests.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me. Do you just mind introducing yourselves? That would be great for our audience to hear from you.
I'm Kristen Wickheiser.
Excellent.
And I'm a teacher, math teacher.
Math teacher.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And?
All right, I'm Amanda Houston, and I have 3 kiddos, and I quasi-homeschool.
There you go. Perfect. And I've been pronouncing it wrong. It's he stand?
It is he stand.
I always say hi stand.
I know, that's what I thought when I first met my husband. I learned.
I guess I feel better. Okay, that's good.
Yes.
That's good. All right. Good. Excellent. Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks for being a part of this. And we always begin by just asking a question to get to know our guests a little bit. And then I answer it first because I thought of the question. That gives you a chance to think about it ahead of time. With what we're going to talk about today, I was curious if there were a favorite teacher that you wanted to give a shout out to. Someone that you, just loved, had a positive thought about. And for me, there are many. I really was fortunate to have some pretty great teachers. One of the ones I talk about a lot, though, was one of my last teachers, Craig Kester. It was when I was getting my master's degree. He was just one of those that was super smart, really, really smart, and yet was able to talk about the Bible and Jesus in a way that made sense. And that's I think a rare skill when you get into some of those, just challenging conversations. When you talk to someone that really, obviously, clearly knows their stuff, but can talk about it to just a regular schmo like me, make it make sense. I'm like, man, Craig was good. So thank you, Dr. Kester, wherever you may be.
What comes to mind is my 4th, 5th, and 6th grade teacher. Her name was Cindy, and I'm still friends with her now.
Oh my gosh, that's
which
awesome.
Is very cool, 25 years later.
Yeah.
And she was incredible and has really kind of shaped, one of many teachers, but especially how she formatted her classroom. It was based on the multiple intelligences. I don't know if you've heard of that. So her entire classroom was based on that, and that really influenced how I view education and how it should be for kids and how we should, be cultivating all these different aspects of kids and their minds and their different skills and gifts and all that. So, shout out to Cindy.
Aw, that's really cool.
Mine would probably be Mrs. Major, and I still call her Mrs. Major, right? Even though I'm an adult and I could probably call her by her first name, she's still Mrs. Major. And ironically, a girl I played volleyball with all through high school ended up marrying one of her sons. And so to me, it's kind of like this, well, do you still call her Mrs. Major, even though she's your mother-in-law? She was a math teacher, though, in high school. And I just remember her enthusiasm for the love of math and her willingness. She was always there before school, and I was one of those kids that was always there before school, like, I didn't know how to do these 5 problems. Can you help me through them? And she was just always so excited to help anybody who came in. And,
That's so cool.
I actually, when I became a teacher, I ended up calling her and one other teacher that I had that I also would say is the top teacher, and just said, hey, I became a math teacher. And so I'm sure that they were probably like, wow, someone else,
I'm sure she loved that.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
So maybe someday one of my students will call me up and say, hey, I became a math teacher too.
That'd be awesome. Thank you. Very cool. Our question today is around schooling and all that. And as I shared with you, I was trying to figure out how to name this and articulate this. For me, part of it comes from, this will be shocking to both of you, we seem to fight a lot in America right now about anything that we can fight about.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, if we do one thing well, it seems to be that, including, public school, private school, homeschool, and I thought it'd be really fun if we could maybe have a conversation about how, instead of fighting about all of that, how do we support all of that? How do we celebrate that? How do we encourage all of that? And in particular, for this, maybe how do we do that within a faith-based context? Because I think that's where some of the fighting honestly comes from. Those who would consider themselves Christians, how do we influence the public schools? How do we do that positively instead of negatively? How, for those folks that choose to homeschool, is that a faith-based choice? Is it a choice for other variety of reasons? There's obviously a lot kind of going on there, and we can't touch on all of that, but that was my hope that, instead of having a fighting conversation, instead, with all of our backgrounds, and I'm going to include myself a little more than I often do sometimes in these, just because, we've had 4 kids that we've put through a lot of different school and are now paying a lot for school as well. How can we make this a positive conversation instead of negative? So thank you for, coming and being a part of it. To begin, I was actually just curious, for background purposes, what was your schooling experience? And I got just a little bit of there, but did you grow up public school, private school, homeschool, whatever it was? And I know you have kids. As you're currently making choices for your kids, kind of what's driving that for you? If we could maybe begin there, that would be, super interesting.
Okay. I guess I can go first. I went to public school, and I had a very positive public school experience. I went to an alternative K through 8 school in Edmonds. Actually, it's still there.
Really? K through 8 alternative.
It is, it's a non-graded program, so they do a lot more like qualitative kind of evaluations than quantitative. And they pod 1st, 2nd, and 3rd graders together, and 4th, 5th, and 6th graders together, all for the 3 years in a row. So you get that consistency, and the older kids help the younger kids, and that kind of thing. So it was a very, very positive experience. And so I did middle school there too, and then I went to regular high school and had a fairly positive experience there.
Was that a challenge? Was it then, a non-alternative high school?
No, it was just a regular high school. So, in middle school, they kind of prepared us for high school. So we started getting more grades and stuff in middle school to prepare us for that. So, it was all around. I had a really good, positive public school experience, and I fully expected to be putting my own kids into public school until I had my own kids. And, you can never plan for, what your kids are going to bring into your life. So I guess that brings me to why I chose to homeschool. My oldest is autistic, and he's twice exceptional, so he's also extremely bright, and he's autistic. And his needs from the very beginning have been very, very different than, the average. And so, I had never been planning to homeschool, but then all of a sudden he was reading at age 2. And I'm like, what do I do with this? I wasn't expecting that. I was figuring by the time he got to kindergarten, if I put him in there, he's probably going to be bored out of his mind. The social aspect would be really good for him. But I also want to keep him engaged and challenged. And so that was kind of where I started, researching and what are we going to do? And I ended up finding HomeLink. in my research. I was considering full-blown homeschooling, which was overwhelming to me.
Sure, yeah.
And so I was really happy to find that there was this resource in our district, and you kind of feel like you're sharing the burden with, actual teachers.
Yeah. So yeah,
Your
HomeLink
wife
is a
being one of
parent
them.
partnership within the district.
It is. It's a parent partnership.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a hybrid. The kids, we call it kid college. So they sign up for particular classes and go to those classes, and then you just fill in the gaps at home with homeschooling. So yeah. So that's what we did, starting in kindergarten, and it's been amazing. It's been a really, really positive experience. We love HomeLink. We did consider putting him in the HiCap program, and that ended up being a colossal failure, just because he doesn't fit the mold, and standardized testing and all of that does not work well with an autistic child. And so there's just a lot of things to consider there. But we figured with homeschooling, that was one way we could really meet his needs, because he's so all over the map. In some ways he's developmentally behind, in other ways he's way ahead, and so he's just all over the map. And so we could meet him where he's at and on all those levels with homeschooling. So that's kind of how we ended up doing that. And then just for simplicity's sake, my other two,
that one out.
Right. My other two, they're, likely a little ADHD, but they're not autistics. They're a little more neurotypical. They would probably do just fine in a standard classroom, and we may still put them in public school in the future. But for simplicity's sake, for now, we're all just doing HomeLink together, and that's been a really positive experience, having them all together as well. They're kind of this little pod right now. So,
cool.
So that's where I'm coming from.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I want to put a pin in the conversation, come back to, I think that as we get to know kids a little bit more and more, we recognize that all of them, are so unique and learn differently and do all that. Just the challenge of being a quote unquote mainstream teacher when you've got 30 kids in a room, and the reality is that none of them are learning, in the same way. I'd love just to come back to that later, if we have time.
How much time do we have?
Right, so we'll see if we get. But first, just kind of your schooling and.
So I went to a K-8 school, but it was a traditional K-8 school. It was just...
But still another K-8? Wow.
Yeah, that's cool. It was in Illinois, though, so nowhere around here. Carbondale, go Salukis.
Yeah.
So we were the Trojans for K through 8, and it was small. I think 80 kids maybe in our graduating class from 8th grade. And then we were a feeder school. Then there was, I think, maybe 3 feeder schools, give or take, that then fed into like the main high school. And then at that graduating class, I think it was like 250. So definitely more kids, but still
not big.
Small compared to where I work now.
Yeah.
So definitely we knew everybody that I went to school with, K through 8, and then you got mixed in with other people, but you still at least knew of everybody there, and everybody knew the teachers that everybody else had, and so small-ish school. And then when I became a teacher, my first job teaching was in a really, really small school in Missouri, and there were like 20 kids per grade there. So I was the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math teacher, and I had, all the kids in the middle school there. And then I moved out here, and I got thrown into a school where we have 15 math teachers.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I went from being the math teacher to one of many math teachers. I kind of joke that I was, the department head, First year teacher, department head already. Because that was it, and right now my daughter is 4, and so she is in preschool. So she's not in mainstream school yet, but she has been in preschool since she was about 6 or 7 months old. And we actually chose to put her in a Christian-based school, and you and I actually had a conversation about it, because I know that there were some differences, not quite the same denomination, and I wasn't sure if that would be a big deal or not. And so I already at 6 months, I was, thinking about, is this is this okay? And but we've been so happy with where she's at, and she comes home and she's singing Bible songs, and there are ones that I'm like, oh, I know that one. I remember that one from when I was younger. And then there's some of them that I have no idea what she's singing, and her tunes, I'm sure, is only slightly off. She's a great singer. So some of them I'm kind of like, I want to hear what the song actually is, so I can learn it. But she's having a great time. We plan to put her in the Lake Stevens School District where I work at. Right now, she says she really wants to be in my class when she gets old enough. We'll see how that, that changes when she gets older. I have a feeling what she thinks is for, I'm her favorite person right now. May not be quite the same when she's 12, 13. We'll see, though. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I lived there a little bit, too. Yeah. That's awesome. Fascinating. Cool. So I grew up primarily in public schools. I had a little bit of time where I was in a private school, and it was so different. It still stays with me. Like I still distinctly remember that process. And it was Catholic one, the uniforms and kind of all those pieces to it. So it's funny how even just a little bit of private Catholic school can stay with you a long, long time. And then, so we have 4 kids and did public school. We've done public school now with all of them, but with one in particular, got to that point where we recognized, man, this is not working for this child. And then all of a sudden had to be like, all right, so then what? What do we do? They had all done private preschool. They had all done, Christian private preschools. And so, we looked around at that. And so, with that child, we've now done a hybrid of homeschool. We also did HomeLink. We did more kind of a homeschool partnership, where it was just a couple of families that had partnered together. And now that child is back fully in public school. It's been a fascinating little journey. Interesting conversations that we've had with different folks. And I guess that would maybe be my first one. I think the impression that people have of who's in public school and who's in private school or who's in homeschool is, public school is criminals, horrible people, all the terrible stuff going on. Private school is rich. And then homeschool is generally super hyper-conservative Christian families. And at least in my little part of the world, I don't know that I found, any of those stereotypes to be true.
Yeah.
I found none of those to be true in my personal experience, too.
Yeah. Where does that come from? Like, why is that the impression I think that so many, folks have of all those different environments?
Probably because you hear it in the media. I mean, the sensationalized ones are the ones that you hear about. And so, you hear about this horrible school where all this horrible things happen. Well, the schools that are 99% of the public schools that are normal don't make the headlines because they're a normal school. Yeah. And again, I think it's you just hear of those extreme cases, no matter which one it is, that kind of pops out, and so then that's what you associate it all with. Yeah.
Right. And I think there's such a wide array of these different categories as well. I mean, public schools, there's urban and rural and, middle class in between. Yeah. And it's going to look really different in all of those different contexts. And same with private school. There's so many different flavors of private school, and same with homeschooling as well. Yeah. Like, I think there was, a couple decades ago, a big push among conservative Christians in, to homeschool. And I think that's where that stereotype probably comes from. But I think that that's changing over time. I'm seeing that a lot more people are starting to homeschool for different reasons as well. And I've seen that a lot just in my personal community and just, the people I follow online and, things like that. So, so that's getting more diverse as well. Yeah.
I think it's interesting, too, to see how any of these dynamics might start changing with everything that happened with COVID. Because the educational system has been kind of flipped around.
It really has been.
Slightly different than it normally is. So it'll be interesting to see how some of those dynamics start to change. I mean, I don't I don't know. I know that online schools have been around for a while.
Yeah.
And
Charter schools and all that.
charter
right?
schools
Yeah.
and all those. And I know that kids haven't always done well in public schools that I've worked with. Then their parents said, well, we're going to try an online school or some of those other things. And I'm just curious how those are more people going to shift to that, or are those schools going to see a sudden like, whoa, we hated this, we don't want to go back? I mean, it'll be interesting to see the changes that come out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point, and leads to again, that question. So all of us as parents and anybody watching with a kid, you recognize your kid is a unique learner, and we talk about how one of our kids is more of a visual learner versus one of our kids is much more of a doer. One of our kids has to do something different every 10 minutes, because just working on something for an hour is never going to happen. And so then as a parent, I struggle with that, right? How do I best support my child? Because that's really at the end of the day where I'm going to land. But then, how do I both support then my kid's teacher as they're trying to figure out my child? It is the best thing to put them in an environment where, there's going to be 25, 30 others, and that's going to actually help them, or is that going to be a hindrance? Like, as a parent for yourself, like you talked a little bit, when you discovered for your kid pretty early on, wow, I don't know that what I thought maybe was going to happen is going to be the best thing to happen. How do you figure that out as a parent to navigate what's best for your kid, but also, again, pushing your kid, or pushing is the wrong word, but supporting them to grow as they need to? Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, from the teacher side of it, I've had parents at the beginning of the year that will reach out to me and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know a little bit about my kid, right?
Yeah.
And oftentimes their emails like, I debated of whether I should tell you these things or not because they don't want to. Oftentimes it's, here's things that my kids struggle with. And I feel like they are cautious because they don't want me to think, oh my goodness, here comes that troublemaker, right? And already be predisposed to think that, oh man, that kid's just going to have a hard time.
Yeah.
But really it helps so much when a parent comes out, because then it's like, okay, that gives me an idea where the kid is coming from. It oftentimes gives the why on the behaviors. And it is so much easier to work with a kid when you know a little bit about them and where they come from, and that, this is something that's typical for them. It's not necessarily just specific to this class. And so I know my big thing would be, as a parent, like, if you're not sure, talk to the teacher. Like, we really do want to help. We really do want kids to learn. But, the secondary level, I've got 150 kids in a normal year.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to get to know 150 kids well enough that I can know exactly what type of learner you are and know your history of why you may think this way or that way or any of those things. And so all that little information that the parents can help provide, it doesn't make me sit there and think, oh my gosh, little Johnny's coming to me. And boy, it makes me think, okay, now I know that here's how I want to approach the kid and to start that relationship in the beginning so that we're building on positives instead of trying to figure out, whoa, what just happened here?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Just that I think no matter what kind of schooling you're doing, you're going to have to, know your child and help advocate for them no matter what context they're in. Because like you were saying, every child is so different and their needs are so different. And so communicating with the teacher is, an amazing thing to do for sure. So, yeah.
Yeah. And then, so my head's just spinning back to so many times I should have talked to my kids' teachers about that would have been really good. Should have thought of that before. I don't know that we can answer this from a big philosophical standpoint. I mean, can you throw 25, 30 kids together and they're going to be able to learn? Shouldn't we all just homeschool our kids because we know, how they learn best and what's best for them? The public school system in America has kind of been an awesome thing for, like 300 years or so. sometimes, yeah, I feel like we do. We look at the flaws, we hear the bad stories, and of course it always needs to be improving. That's certainly part of it. How can we be advocates for good within something that has done a pretty decent job, I think, for a whole heck of a lot of kids?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think, like I was saying before, every child's needs is different, and but overall, yes, the public school system is a positive thing, and it's really good that we have a well-educated society, and that's what we want,
Yeah.
And that's how we achieve that. Not everybody can homeschool or afford to send their kid to private school, and it's a resource that's there for absolutely everyone, and I think that's really important. And even just a Christian standpoint, we want to be reaching every single person, that's what Jesus did. And so I think the public schools really meet a lot of that need. And I think that that's really important. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's challenging to try to reach, you say 30, well, I'm thinking 150.
Right, yeah,
right?
even.
When you get up to the secondary
Yeah,
level, it's,
yeah.
5 classes a day instead of, it's tough, but again, it's trying to build those relationships with the kids and looking for ways to do that aren't always the same. So this year, obviously, has been a little different.
Yeah,
but there have been some really good positives that have come out of it. When we were doing virtual full-time, there was no kids in person. I would set up weekly one-on-one meetings with the kids where they would have a time that they came back. No one else was in the meet with us at all, and I could just have a conversation with the kid. And it was so nice because you get to hear sometimes random stories from the kids, which is awesome. But it was a chance to kind of check in with them on their mental health and all of those things, which when you're in a classroom of 30 kids is kind of hard to do because you can't really have a one-on-one conversation with 29 other ears that are working, right?
Yeah. Or watching TikTok. That's one.
Yeah. And so I think it's just always trying to look for the positive of, okay, this may not be the easiest for the parents, for the kids, for the teachers. It was a rough year for everybody.
Yeah.
But trying to just pull some of those positives out. And I'm already in my head trying to spin this of, okay, when I'm back to having a full classroom, what parts of these, how can I try to find ways to incorporate it? Because, I didn't get to see a lot of their faces. Cameras were usually off at the secondary level.
Yep.
But I got to know some of the kids probably better than I would have in a normal school year. And so it's just always trying to make things work and try to meeting the kids where they're at. And yeah.
Cool. So awesome. That really is cool, the one-on-one. Yeah. What a powerful thing. Yeah. So it gets to that. You do your job as a Christian. You're in a public school setting. Actually, I'm very familiar with. For people that know, I volunteer there. I'm the drama teacher there, which is just an after-school club. But yeah, you're a Christian. I'm a Christian pastor. Whoa. And there was definitely that when I first started to volunteer there and help out there. They're like, hey, what's the agenda?
Who's this Bill guy?
Yeah, what are you on? And it took me a couple years of just going and volunteering and always being clear when I put on that hat, hey, I'm just volunteer Bill here. That's it. Before they trusted me enough to be like, oh, okay, you can be here. But I am really clear. I'm there to be a positive Christian person in this, public school setting. That's and yeah, people have gotten to know me clearly, as a pastor within that community. How do you do that? How do you do that within that particular setting as a teacher? How do you live out trying to be a good, positive Christian person in a place that just needs that?
Yeah, it can't be overt.
Yeah.
I can't come out and say, hey, come to my church, and
right,
all the things that would be nice to be able to say sometimes.
Right,
But I know when you were doing your series on getting to know your neighbor, and your neighbor doesn't necessarily have to know that you're a Christian by you telling them, but showing them, and it should be your actions. And so I try to keep that in the back of my mind of when I'm dealing with the kids on whatever it may be, trying to do it in a way that would show a positive aspect of who I am and treating the kid with respect. And occasionally a kid tells me, I went to, something at church or whatever, and I could say, oh, and what church did you go to? And then we can kind of open the conversation up that way. But for most kids, I don't ever tell them that I go to Hope, because you're not supposed to do that as a public school teacher. And so it is kind of one of those that I look for those ends of when a kid brings up their religion with me, then I'm like, okay, you and I can talk. And if they go and happen to tell their friend, that's great. But but again, it's just trying to show through the actions of, this is how you would treat a kid.
That's cool.
Yeah, I totally, go ahead.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'm 100% on board with, doing evangelism that way.
Yeah.
I'm just a huge believer in, people will see God through you, through the way you live your life, and you don't need to be overt about it.
Yeah.
In fact, it's even, it's more potent when it's done that way, rather than trying to shove it down somebody's throat. People will be a lot more receptive that way and really feel it that way, I think. And so I think that's one way to do that in the public school context, or any context, really.
Well, and that was my question for you. I think, I'll freely admit my bias here. I think some of the stereotype for Christians that pull their kids from the public school setting and will homeschool and do all that is to take them out of the world. And my bias would be, no, we need to be in the world. That if you are homeschooling for all kinds of different reasons, I hope that one isn't the one.
Right.
That instead, if you're homeschooling, for the educational welfare of your kid and all kinds of different stuff, that you're still then finding a way to go out and bring your kids into the world to again, be salt and light.
Definitely.
Again, not to tip your hand, but I think that's part of what you guys do and what I wanted you to share, like how you think about that for you.
Yeah, definitely. As you can tell with homeschooling, it's really easy to incorporate your faith into that, obviously.
Yeah.
You can be overt about it.
Yeah.
So, we do a little bit of that as well. But yeah, I really think that it is important to be out in the world as well. And so I think that's why I'm so excited about HomeLink is that we can have that really hybrid and still, be with the people in our community and not just be in our own little bubble, because I think that can be so limiting in our faith, because we really need to be interacting with different kinds of people in ourselves, so that's been really good. And then you can get that, through church and, other social avenues as well, and extracurricular activities and that kind of thing too. So it is really important.
Yeah, the word you said is bubble, and we've all lived that, right? Over this last
year.
Yeah,
this last year, we all had our own bubble. And I would hope that for those of us, that would consider ourselves being faith-based people, if our bubble is not expanding and not bumping into others, then we're not doing it right. And there was a real hard medical need why we had to do that, and that was great. And really celebrate those people that were able to do that and do that well. But now what a great opportunity to start stretching that bubble a little bit again.
Sure. And even within our homeschooling context, I try to keep that in mind, to be expanding the bubble, even though we're at home, we're taking Spanish with Sarah and, just learning about different cultures and languages and talking about, let's talk about geography and learn about all the different parts of the world, or just different parts of our community, or different socioeconomic backgrounds or racial things. And bringing that into homeschooling as well. So we're, kind of popping the bubble within our bubble a little bit. So, So I think there are ways to do that within a homeschooling context as well.
Yeah.
So,
And I think if you do it right, it's almost more natural to do it in a homeschool setting, that you don't have the restrictions of public schools and what we are allowed to say and what we aren't allowed to say. And
for sure.
So definitely it's set up well for that.
Yeah. Definitely.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, I think we should be put in charge of schooling.
I don't know if I want that responsibility.
I'm just saying, it sounds pretty good when we talk about it here. Yeah, we're about kind of know. Was there anything that maybe we didn't talk about that you were thinking, I just wanted to say that one thing, or I thought that one thing, or anything that maybe, we didn't get to?
Not that comes to mind.
I think, yeah.
No? Awesome. I guess maybe the last thing I might say, being married to a teacher and having a couple of kids in school, it has been an incredibly hard year. If you are listening and you are watching and you have an opportunity to reach out to a teacher anywhere and say thank you for, just doing your best, because I really do believe the people that I've been in contact with, they did their best in an absolutely impossible situation. And I'm so thankful for my kids' teachers and for my wife teacher, and all the others that just did incredible stuff. So,
I'm in awe of all the teachers
thank you
year.
to you.
Yeah.
Well, and it really is this year more than ever, it's been a partnership of the parents have had to do a lot more in their child's education than they normally do. And so it's not just the teachers that need the thanks. I mean, the parents really have had to do more than
I did really well in 8th grade science this year. I'm just saying. Way better than the last time I did 8th grade science, actually. No, thank you. You're right. Yeah, it's, that seems to be, again, shouldn't that be something that we can celebrate and thank each other for? Because,
in a way, like everybody has been homeschooling this year, in some way, shape, or form.
A lot more like the home
but like you're saying that, parents have been forced to be a lot more involved with their kids' lives, which I think when they are, that's probably a positive thing overall.
Yeah.
I know that hasn't been the case for everyone, and there have been some, kids falling through the cracks and things like that. But when the parents are seeing what their kids are doing and they're involved with them and learning along with them, I think that can be a really positive thing as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would agree with you, except for they're probably like, if I didn't have to do that and do my job full
That's
time too,
right. That's the thing.
That's the hard part,
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Super fun conversation. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for watching or listening, wherever you have been watching or listening from. Hope you join us back here again next week, as well as we dive into, I think, a pretty interesting topic that we've got all lined up for that. And if there's anything that you want us to talk about, put that in the chat. We'd love to hear that as well. Good. Hey, you're almost both on spring break or summer break. Yay! Congratulations. The end is near.
19 more school days. Not that anybody knows the exact number.
Yeah, the exact
But
number.
who's counting?
Perfect. Thank you both so much. Thank you all for watching, listening, and we'll see you back next time. Bye-bye.